So of all the questions I get asked in the comments, by far the most of them are about outside half. So with that in mind, I thought I'd carry on the position group series and talk about the options going forward. My name's Christian and this is the Welsh Sports Podcast. So I'm not going to mess around. I'll get straight into the first player who's basically had the jersey over the Six Nations, and that's Sam Costello. Now, recently he came in for a lot of criticism for his performances in that Six Nations. There was a lot of heat came on him, especially for that Italy game, which I give him some criticism for. His kicking out of hand and missing touch and stuff was just simply not good enough. But I sort of feel a little bit sorry for him. I mean, he's had 12 caps, but he's still a young guy. He's only 23. He dealt with a big injury after the World Cup. I thought he had a decent World Cup in the small parts that he did play, and he sort of had that really bad injury and it put him out, and then he's come back into a poor Scarlets team for like 2 games, and then he's expected to just step up and play against Scotland and deliver, and then he had that other injury which sort of stifled his return, and he's just never really gained any form back since then. So I think it's a bit unfair, the criticism he's been coming up against, especially given the fact that Wales have struggled to get any go-forward ball, and it's very difficult then for him to sort of get into any patterns of play and start running the show, adding to the fact that he's not really had a 12 that's helped him. I don't think Tompkins, his erratic nature and his lack of pure size and carrying really sort of has been a hindrance to Costello. You saw the difference when he could just dump the ball off to Grady and how much that helped him to go forward. I still think he's the front runner. Now, theoretically, there's going to be a couple of more senior players coming back and available for selection, hopefully, in the summer tour, which we'll touch on in a minute when I get further down the list. But if you look at the current options that we had during the Six Nations, Costello, Lloyd and Kai Evans, if we're picking from those, I still go ahead with Costello. I think he's got just the better all-round game. He can be very attacking, particularly with himself with ball in hand. He's very good at opening up space and bringing other players into the game when defenders start drifting off him onto other attackers. He's very good at spotting holes and breaking half gaps, and I think if he can get some front foot ball, get some phases and bring that into his game for Wales, I think he could be good going forward. I just think he needs time. He's 23, so although it feels like he's been around for a while, and some people have been calling him out for a while and have never been sold on him, so I understand that, but I just think he needs time, and I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. He just needs a run of good form and not getting any injuries, and some front foot ball to just show what he can do. So my first player is Sam Costello. Then we'll move on to his main competitor for the red jersey, both at international and club level, unfortunately, and that's Ioan Lloyd. So Lloyd gets a lot of hype in my comments. A lot of people say that he's got the highest ceiling, he's got the most ability out of our current 10s, that he reminds them of a young Finn Russell. I get it. I see the physical attributes. I see the way he can run with the ball and step and win in small spaces and stuff like that. The problem with Lloyd is, to me, he's not an outside half. He's probably a fullback, and it's not through any fault of his own, but he's just never nailed down a position. He's played so many positions when he was at Bristol, never playing many games in a row at one position and just moving around. And he's come to the Scarlets and he's been given an opportunity at 10 with Costello being out for the beginning of the season. And he looked okay in, again, a poor team. And he looked okay in himself in attack, but I just don't think he can control or run the game. He's very erratic in my opinion, and he's got a real sus defence. We saw in that Treviso game, he just got bumped off on a one-on-one tackle, and they ran down the wing and scored in the corner. And that's just not good enough. You can't do that at international level, and Gatland will certainly notice stuff like that. The problem is going to be he's not played 10 a lot, and realistically you're going to think that he's not going to play 10 that much, because Costello is going to be in front of him whether people agree with that or not at Scarlets. So if he's in front of him at Scarlets, you can't expect him to be picked for Wales ahead of him. Now, I think he's a good squad player. I would certainly have him in the Wales setup, again, with his versatility, a player who can play in many different positions, a good player maybe to sit on the bench. If you want to do a split with the more forwards and the two backs, then he would be a good player because he can cover everyone. But I just don't think he's an outside half. He definitely has an attacking spark, and when the defence breaks up and it's open play, maybe the last 10 minutes of a game, you want to bring him on, like that Scotland game when it was very loose and stuff like that, and he came on, he was able to just play and chuck the ball around, and that suits him. But that's not what international rugby generally is, and if we try to play like that going forward with Wales, it's just not going to work. So I'm not sold on him at all at outside half. I think he's a fullback, though I think that he's not particularly strong at that position either. It sounds like I'm just criticising him, which I'm not. I don't mean to. I just think he's so versatile that he doesn't have one position where you could say that's his best one. But I think fullback is probably his best one. One thing he is better than Costello at is his general kicking out of hand. I think he's got a bigger boot, seems to gain more territory than Costello, and maybe a bit more calm with the goal kicking. But just general outside half play, I don't think he can control a game, and I just don't think he's going to have the opportunity to learn. He's still young and 23, same as Costello, so like I said, he needs time, but I just don't think he's going to get the time. He should have gone, I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but realistically he should have gone to another Welsh region when he moved from Bristol, gone to Cardiff where there was no real outside half before the season started, or maybe to the Dragons or someone like that, and he could have been playing week in, week out at 10, and then it could have been a battle, and then we can sit and have a discussion about it. But I just don't think he's going to get the run at 10 that he needs to learn the position enough to step up at international rugby. So I'll probably get a lot of flack for this one, but I just don't think he's a 10 going forward. So Ioan Lloyd would be not one of my choices. He'd be in the squad, but not for a 10. Now, moving away from the younger guys, I want to look at a more senior player, and that is Gareth Anscombe. Now, I wasn't expecting Gareth Anscombe to be available. I thought that the World Cup was the last time we would see him in a red jersey because he was moving to Japan, but seeing as all that has fallen through and now he's gone to Gloucester next season, joining up with Thomas Williams, they'll be halfback partners, so that's obviously a plus for him. I think it's definitely someone that Gatland's going to look at, and in my opinion, he should look at. Now, he is 33 in May, so he's up there in age. He's not going to be in the next World Cup, but he's got plenty of experience being around the block, and I think if you have to say if he wasn't going to move away last season, then he would have played in the Six Nations if he was fit. Now, fitness has always been an issue for Anscombe, but I think he would be great to bring into the squad and give these youngsters a mature sort of outside half who's been there, done it, knows how to play the game, knows how to win big games, kick goals to win really important games. The one in South Africa for our first ever away test win in South Africa, that one comes to mind. He's probably, in my opinion, the best option right now, but you have to think, is he going to be in Gatland's plans? Now, Gatland has pretty much always brought him into the squad, regardless of whether he's been fit or whether his form has been good. He's always sort of brought him in and tried to get him straight in the team, and Pivac did that as well. So you can see what coaches think about him. I think, in my opinion, that he wants to be part of the squad. I've seen him I think he's does a Sport in Wales podcast, and he talks about the Wales squad as though he's still part of it. Like, he refers to the team as like us and we and stuff like that. So I think in his head, he's still a squad player. It's whether Gatland decides he's just going to push him to the side and just stick with these young guys. That would be the only doubt for me that Anscombe doesn't come into the team. Because when you think about it, in the World Cup last year, you have to think that probably the best rugby we'd played for a long time was in that Australia game where he was running the show at 10. I understand that Australia weren't very great and we dominated them, but Anscombe was superb and he made us play superb and he kicked his goals and I think he even had a drop goal and stuff like that. So I think Anscombe is the best option now, and I think he should, for me, start. As long as he's playing okay for Gloucester, I think he should start. And I know I've said we should probably stick with Costello, but we're so desperate at this point to get a win for this young team that we need to put some players in real crucial positions, like outside half, that are match winners and that can create match-winning opportunities for other players, and Anscombe is certainly one of those, and he's proved that over his career. So even though he's not going to be in the next World Cup, I say bring him into the team straight away, start him at 10, keep the other young guys around him, and then he gives us a better opportunity to win now, because although we're planning for the future, and Gatland says he's not under any pressure, and it could take a bit longer before we get some wins, the Welsh public, Welsh rugby public, and I mean just general supporters are soon going to run out of patience for these poor performances and losses. You can only be the plucky loser for so long before you've got to start winning games, and I think that is going to come soon, especially against Australia, where I think both teams are in a similar position with like beginning of a new development. And I think a win out there could really springboard the team for these young guys to realise what it takes to win, what it takes to win away from home and stuff like that. And Anscombe is a player who's been there and done that, can help nurture these players through, and he can really give us an opportunity to win and bring through the likes of Costello and Lloyd, if that's who you want in your team. And then they can maybe get a little bit more time to be an understudy, because I just don't think either of them are ready for the big job yet. So yeah, I think Gareth Anscombe would be my choice going forward for now, just for now. But Anscombe is not the only more senior outside half that we could bring into the squad. We got in England, we have Jared Evans. He's 27. He's only had 9 caps, which is a shame to me, because I think when he was at Cardiff he's been excellent at times in attack. He's over there playing for Harlequins, playing pretty well to be honest, even though he's more of an understudy to Marcus Smith. But Jared Evans is a player I've always really liked. He reminds, it's interesting, Costello reminds me of a younger Jared Evans, the way they play. One of those players who like takes the ball to the line, loves throwing like the pump fake dummies and going through gaps on their own. I think Jared Evans is excellent at doing that. His biggest issue has been his kicking, particularly at goal. He missed a really poor one even this season for Harlequins against Leicester to basically lose the game for Harlequins. So that's probably always been an issue for him, and his size I think had been an issue for Gatland in the past. But I think he's a good option as an attacker. He's always very, very dangerous with the ball in hand, so if you wanted like a player that takes the ball to the line similar like Costello but a bit more senior and been around the block a bit more, Jared Evans could be an option. Now I know he plays in England and he's only got the 9 caps, but there was an interesting interview with him where he said that as far as he knows he is eligible to play for Wales, and I'm not sure how that works, but I'm just saying what he said himself, that he is eligible, and if he were to get the call up, he would obviously accept it. That's what he said anyway. So I think and that is if the cap rule stays. I really would like that cap rule to go, but I'm not talking about that. So if Evans becomes available for selection, I think he could be certainly someone interesting to look at, especially if you don't want to bring Anscombe in. You've got to think at 27 he's going to be around for the next World Cup at least. So he could be someone that Gatland has another look at, and just a bit more of a seniority player in that camp. Another player in a similar mould playing in England at the moment is Callum Sheedy. Similar age at 28, had a few more caps than Jared Evans with 16. The interesting thing about Sheedy is he will be returning to play for Cardiff next season. So his contract was up with Bristol and he had an option. If he wanted to be available for Wales, he had to come back and sign for a region, which obviously means that he wants to play for Wales, because otherwise he just would have stayed in Bristol for probably more money and decided that his Welsh career was over. So he's obviously got designs on playing for Wales. I think he probably would have had a good opportunity in this Six Nations had he not picked up an unfortunately timed injury before the Six Nations. So Sheedy's an interesting one. He had quite a lot of opportunities under Wayne Pivac. There was actually a period of time where people were actually contemplating whether he would be a good person to start rather than Biggar when Wales were sort of misfiring and struggling in attack. I think he had a few opportunities, never really grabbed the game with both hands when he had the opportunity to start. That Georgia game comes to mind where Wales were just dreadful in particular, but he wasn't great either. Pretty sturdy goal kicking. He was sort of in and out of form for Bristol, but he's come back into it recently and been battling for the starting jersey, and I think his battle with Tinas De Beer next season for the 10 jersey is going to be very interesting. But I do think he will probably beat De Beer out, and he'll definitely put himself into contention for Wales. Another one who I think Gatland should take a look at now. I don't think Gatland's worked with him yet. Could be wrong with that. So I'd like Gatland to have a look at him and bring him into the squad. Again, he's going to be around for the next World Cup. He'll be like 32, so he'll be at the end of his career, but he'll be very experienced. And he's got the minerals to be a good outside half. Sheedy is just his form has dipped for long periods of time, then has come back, and obviously he had, like I said, he had that unlucky injury. Otherwise, I think he probably could have got a shout in this year's Six Nations, maybe as the second or third outside half. So he's looking forward to coming back to Cardiff, and we're looking forward to seeing him back in Wales and seeing if he can compete for that 10 jersey. Now, before I come back and talk about the other few players that are playing in Wales, I just want to do a shameless plug. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, and I'd really appreciate it if you watch me regularly but you don't subscribe. If you'll just hit that subscribe button and hopefully you get me up to 1,000, that would be a great benchmark for me and way bigger than I thought this channel could get when I first started. So just thank everyone who's already subscribed and who watches, and if you're not subscribed, please hit that button now. Thank you. But enough of that waffling on. We'll go back to the list. Someone who's been involved in the squad recently, Kai Evans. He's basically been 10 cover. I think he had a little run out off the bench at 10 as well for Wales against England, even though it was like 2 minutes, which he was probably a bit gutted about, but there we are. I think Kai Evans is a good option. His best position to me is probably fullback. That's where he's played the majority of his rugby, particularly this year. Had the odd game for the Dragons at 10, but barely. So I think unless he starts getting brought in at 10 regularly for the Dragons and we see him run in that position and create stuff, I don't think he could be an option for Wales at 10. Similar to, like I was saying about Lloyd, he's got to just play in that position. He does have a really big boot and his goal kicking is pretty reliable. He just nails most stuff from within his own half, which is obviously very useful at international rugby at any level. Anyway, but I think his problem is he's not the most athletic, and that's probably the biggest letdown of him generally as a player. Although, you know, he's a decent, tidy player and he doesn't really make any mistakes. He's pretty good like that. But I think for international level, probably need a little bit extra. And I just don't think he'll create enough at 10 for Wales for what we need at the moment. But his goal kicking will always be a massive strength for him. So I think will be a good squad player with his versatility. But I don't think he's the man going forward, although Gatland's had a look at him in that position. Moving on to his Dragons teammate, Will Reid. Now, Will Reed did get a name check from Gatland before the Six Nations, and that was quite interesting because he'd barely played for the Dragons at that point. Now he has played quite a majority of the season at 10 because Angus O'Brien picked up that nasty injury. And I mean, he's just been a young outside half learning the game. He's been a bit up and down. Recently, he seems like he's more settled into that position, which is really good. He was man of the match in that really important game against Zebra for the Dragons. So that was promising to see. You can see the development in him, a bit more controlled, a bit more like pragmatic, not trying to just force things. So that's really positive. I still think it's way too early for him. Like I said, still learning the game. Didn't play an awful lot at under 20s either, so he's not really had that much of a taste of that level of internationals. So he's just signed a new deal for the Dragons, which is great for the Dragons. Good to keep your young players, which means he's obviously going to be sticking around and available for selection. I think if he can continue this improvement and this trajectory, I think he'll be someone who will eventually get into the Wales squad. I just think it's way too early at the moment. He's got to just increase his consistency for the Dragons and just be that sort of more regular player who just does the job and keeps the team ticking over and creates stuff and things like that. So I think he will be a Wales international at some point, but maybe another year or two at the Dragons and see where we are then. But when I first saw him play, I didn't really understand why Gatland was sort of name-checking him as someone who he liked the look of, if I'm being totally honest. But recently I can see the sort of the shoots of a good player in there. So he just, like I said, just needs time, and he'll come along nicely, I think. Moving away from the Dragons and to the Ospreys, Owen Williams is sort of, he's more like the archetypal Gatland player you would look at and say, yeah, that's the type of player Gatland would like. It's 6'1", he's quite a big physical outside half, has played at inside centre as well throughout his career, or in his career. But Gatland just hasn't really liked the look of him since he's come back. He gave him one or two opportunities, but whenever it's been like a discussion between Owen Williams and Costello, Gatland has always gone for Costello. Now he is 32, Owen Williams, so you can understand that. He has had 8 caps, only 7 points, and he's never really done anything in those caps. So yeah, I don't think he's going to be in the running, but you know, he's played in the big games for the Ospreys this season, so Toby Booth obviously rates him with the options that he has, but I just don't think that he's got an opportunity now to get in the Wales team. It would sort of be a pointless thing to bring him in, and I think that's basically why Gatland has left him out. But there is an outside half at the Ospreys that a lot of people are clamouring for and really being impressed with, and I am one of those people who've been impressed with him, and that is Dan Edwards. He's basically come into the team, and whenever he's had an opportunity to play, he's been pretty good, to be honest. In fact, in certain games he's been excellent. You only have to look at that Ulster game, which obviously everyone will remember that drop goal, but it's just the circumstances of that. You know, he was going to decide whether his team wins or loses the game by that drop goal in the last minute, and by all accounts it was him who made the call that we were going to go for the drop goal, and he didn't sort of take the opportunity to maybe try and milk out a penalty or hope that someone scores the try and takes the pressure away from him. He took it on his own shoulders, which is very impressive for a 20-year-old, which obviously shows that he has a lot of confidence in his ability, and rightly so. He's got a lot of attacking prowess. He's very fast and very good at sort of breaking tackles and finding gaps and stuff like that. He had a lot of experience at the under-20s level as well, 17 caps, 101 points, so he was obviously very, very impressive at that level and respected by the coaches, and you know, played younger than his age probably as well at times. Many people's favourite for the job going in the future, and I would probably agree with them, maybe. Still very, very early in his career though. He just needs to get starts and play games. He's only sort of, interestingly, Toby Booth has used Owen Williams in the big European games, so that maybe shows still where Dan Edwards is. He's not ready for the step up yet, although I think he could have, done pretty good in those games. I'm not doubting that, but maybe in a year or two he could be the man. He'll certainly be pressing for that jersey if he carries on the trajectory that he is at the moment, because he's been absolutely fantastic, very impressive. Like 20 years of age, just to be, at this level, playing at 20, let alone running the show, scoring tries, and just actually, that, like I said, that drop goal was just so clutch and just pure ballsy from such a young guy. And it just shows that he's got all the faith in himself. And if I could sort of put him at one region to nurture him through, I would say the Ospreys. Like, they've brought so many good players through over the last few years. Toby Booth is a fantastic coach. I think he's the best coach out of all the regions, which is obviously not a massive hot take because they're the best performing region at the moment. But Dan Edwards just needs time. Let's not pile the pressure on him. Like, we all hope and think that he could be the man moving forward. Let's just give him time to develop. We don't need to rush him through. We've got other players that we can give chances to at the moment, but give it a year or two, and I think this guy will he can really make a push for that jersey because he's box office when he plays. But my overall feelings are, in this summer tour, I'd love to see Anscombe back in the squad, and if he's available and fit, playing. If not, I would stick with Costello and just go with him until maybe Sheedy has a good run of form next season for Cardiff. Just give Costello now the next few games if Anscombe isn't going to be around, because you just got to back him now and give him an opportunity. But if Anscombe is around, I want to see Anscombe because I think he gives us the best opportunity to win games. But that's about it from me. Subscribe and I'll catch you on the next one.